Hello, welcome to the Go Higher Frequency Astrology channel. My name is Suzanne. Join me as I investigate how the monthly cycles are progressing with a focus on how we can navigate this time more productively. Today, I'm going to be talking about the upcoming solar eclipse at the final degree of Virgo happening on September the 21st, right before the fall equinox. I'm going to start with a high-level overview before diving in more specifically to delineate the eclipse chart located in Washington, D.C. So if you're interested in that delineation, be sure to stick around. But before I begin, I want to promote a workshop I'll be helping facilitate with Lawless Astrology. It's about Chiron and Chiron's role in helping us not only heal, but fulfilling our life purpose. I'll include a link below in case you're interested. So after the first new moon in Virgo in late August, remember this was called the preemptive strike, where we were called to take our blinders off, to wake up to what was happening around us, to find out what was the most significant thing in our life, what life-sustaining actions or habits were we going to commit to moving forward. And then during this full moon eclipse in Pisces that happened a couple of days ago and over the next couple of weeks, we may be tested with challenges that test our commitment to what we've identified as significant. Are they indeed the most significant things in our lives? And were we going to be a passive participant in this life and just hope that what we've identified as the most significant will play out? Or were we going to take an active role in creating our ideal future? And now, during the solar eclipse, we're going to integrate a new understanding of the past Virgoan themes we've been working on since the nodes flipped to the Virgo-Pisces axis at the beginning of the year. So once we are clear about what is most significant to us, and we've been tested on our resolve to that commitment, we are now ready to alleviate all distractions that keep us from moving forward to becoming our own ideal. Are we going to commit to those things? Are we going to have clarity to commit to what is most significant? This is the Pisces polarity point, the Pisces North Node. And are we going to commit to something without delusion, but with very clear understanding of what it is that we can accomplish? And let's be very clear about the pragmatic possibilities of that, because it's Virgo after all. How are we going to clear out all of the distractions, all of the noise, and get to work on what it was that we identified? And we have the next 6 months to put this into practice in the outer world as the eclipse pattern is played out through the next solar eclipse in Aquarius in February and following to the new moon in Pisces in March 2026. I see much of what we are experiencing this year as not only a reckoning, but an opportunity to wake up, to see more clearly, to look at our life experiences from the opposite side of the wheel. When people come into astrology, they frequently start with studying the personal planets. But if I had one recommendation to anyone who wants to study astrology seriously, it would be that you start with the outer planets. Start with the generational influences and work your way inwardly from that perspective. Because our realities begin with this larger societal framework. It's similar to the phrase, as above, so below. Life is a concentric circle, a movement both inward and outward. It is like breath. Even if we don't realize it, our lives are influenced not only by the generation we are born into, but our parents' and siblings' generations. It's the backdrop, the scenery of what influences us at a personal level, the influences of our personal planet filter, our personal perspective. And that conditioning runs deep. Even if we are not conscious of that influence, it feeds into how we perceive everything around us. We are given moments in life to evolve, to expand our perception, to look at life from a different point of view. This time period is one of those rare moments that we are given the opportunity for rapid expansion. We have little control over these generational shifts since they are collective. What we do control is our individual responses, and that is where the opportunity lies. We can use this opportunity to expand our own consciousness. This year has been largely a year of disorientation for many of us, a breaking apart of our carefully constructed reality, a reality that assumed we would all keep evolving in the same direction. For a majority of us, it was a reality that, though imperfect, included a reverence for science and education, democracy, and a certain loyalty and commitment to our allies. This reality has quickly been dashed this year, much quicker and easier than many of us expected. It has been an experience of cognitive dissonance for some, a breaking down of parts of our reality, especially our ideals and hopes for the future. Your experience of cognitive dissonance may not be the same, or you may not have even experienced it yet. Unless you're extremely crystallized in your belief systems, I believe we will all experience some form of cognitive dissonance before this is all over. This cognitive dissonance is symbolic of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, supercharged lately by the harmonic connections to Pluto and Uranus. There's been a concerted push to divide us more and more by altering our shared reality, and it's been working spectacularly. There have been real truths uncovered, as well as false truths and half-truths. So it's ever more difficult to find out what's objectively true, or more specifically, what's our collective shared truth. What you perceive is largely dependent on your worldview and what news sources you trust. As with any experience, there are gifts to be found here if you open yourself up to them. And one of those gifts is to see the perspective from the other side of the wheel, to see a higher truth beyond our extreme binary ways of thinking and perceiving. The symbolism present in the charts are many, but I'll focus on a specific example related to this eclipse. In March 2015, we had an eclipse at the 29th degree of Pisces. During that eclipse, the North Node was at 9 degrees of Aries, the degree of our last solar eclipse in March. When I looked into what was going on during that eclipse in 2015, I found two repeating themes I want to focus on here. The month of this eclipse, Trump set up an exploratory committee to investigate his candidacy for president. I also found that the Supreme Court was hearing arguments about the legality of the Obamacare subsidies via state exchanges. Healthcare for all was a key legacy of President Obama. His administration fought like hell to push that legislation through. We desperately needed it, with so many people in our country not able to access healthcare, people going bankrupt just to pay their medical bills. Obamacare ended up being largely popular, save for the costly premiums on the exchange. My partner and I had to purchase our healthcare through this exchange, so I know how frustrating it is to have to pay so much for so little, especially when you are barely making ends meet as it is. It was expensive, but it did cover preventative care. And if we had been unlucky to have a medical emergency without insurance, it would have been much, much worse. I have heard those horror stories. Now we are on the other side of the wheel, with this eclipse opposing both Saturn at 28 degrees of Pisces and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. We are confronting the spiritual karma of the past. During the fight to push this legislation through, we were warned about death tribunals, which this administration is now attempting to self-fulfill via an approval mechanism to deny and delay coverage. For a country who values money and business above all else, this is not surprising. They were right to predict it, because they knew their own motivations and the machinations of money and power. But now it's much, much worse than that. Not only are we losing access to affordable healthcare, but we are also losing access to trusted, nonpartisan guidance about wider public health concerns such as pandemics and vaccines. We are overcorrecting, creating another level of extremist backlash, which will continue unless we collectively wake up to the reality of such extremism. And I want to say here that we may agree that the healthcare establishment and their lobbyists have been a huge issue in driving up costs for both consumers and the government. And we might agree that we have been increasingly treated with long-term drug therapy instead of dealing with the root causes of disease. But where we might not agree are the tactics used to address these issues. Instead of enforcing reforms, there has been a concerted effort to simply delegitimize these institutions, which further makes murky the waters of who to trust. And with the latest dismantling of one such institution, the CDC, we are once again seeing states' rights take center stage, with California, Washington, and Oregon now splitting off from the government to make their own vaccine recommendations, while Florida is getting rid of vaccine mandates altogether, even for school-aged children. And this divergence between states and our union is surely to bring about a future confrontation. Bernadette Brady, in her research about eclipses, finds that this Saros Series has to do with bringing to surface any long-term worries about loved ones, health-related issues, or issues related to paperwork or communication. This could manifest as worrying news about a loved one's health or responsibilities with paperwork coming to roost. Beyond the obvious themes in the news right now, the Epstein files are surely coming home to roost, the recent questions about Trump's health, and the very public CDC drama, we are seemingly creating a self-fulfilling prophecy based on our own value systems. Since we've elevated businesses and wealthy people while demonizing the growing number of people who don't fit into this ecosystem or are not supported enough by this ecosystem, there is no moral culpability at cutting more and more people off from these government-mandated shared resources. Since this carries political risk, we do this by drowning people in paperwork. But the goal is obvious. If we get rid of all government-mandated shared resources, then we're not held responsible for any of these people at all. Trump mentioned that if he is not allowed to administer tariffs, our world is going to turn into a third world country. But as with many of these accusations, it is a deflection of what appears to be the primary goal. If not a third world country, we've been consistently moving toward a less developed one, like Russia and China. And the model of those countries seem to be the recognition that we can more easily force people deeper into a kind of slavery because people have little choice for their survival. So let's take a look at this eclipse chart located in Washington, D.C. The eclipse falls on the cross of the vessel of love. And like the full moon eclipse, it's exploring the idea that productivity and hard work leads to success, when in reality, success in society's terms has more to do with luck. If you are lucky enough to be born into a wealthy family, then you are more likely to be successful. If you are lucky enough to have made the correct bet on the stock market, you can be given the keys to the kingdom as well. You don't even have to be a contributing member of the global collective to be successful in this world. And as society is clearly illustrating at this moment, mundane laws do not apply to the wealthy. You can do just about anything you want to do. You can take riskier bets, and much of the time you can do this without impunity. Even if what you do is illegal or morally repugnant, you'll very rarely be punished for it. If you don't have money, you are not only much more vulnerable to those who wield more money and power than you, but also to the rule of law. You don't enjoy the same freedoms for risk-taking. And just because you work hard and do all the right things to fit into this ecosystem does not mean you will find success in this life either. It does not mean you will be safe. And it doesn't mean that your country won't suddenly become unstable, forcing you to look for more viable places to move so you can provide for your family. An interesting question. Is that where we're headed in the United States? Well, I know quite a few families who have relocated because of this instability and because they were more in danger for their lives and their kids' lives. This new moon eclipse is now featured in the kite configuration, similar to the one we had during the full moon in Aquarius on August the 9th. Now with the new moon replacing Mars at the base of the kite. The new moon is opposing Saturn in the human design gate 25, hanging off of the identity center. It describes the insecurity of the self manifested in times of challenge. Ra says this about this line: we live in an era where the self is insecure, and so we have an enormous movement throughout the world where people try to secure their identity. Who am I? You can see that the detriment here is one of the keys to the revival of fundamentalism and theocracies in the world. This lack of identity being imprinted by old religious symbols into people. And Neptune adds a veil of deception here. As we see the world's power center shifting, along with the world's demographic changes, we are searching for our identity, especially in the West. And because of our current limitations, Pluto in the first house, in gate 60, line 6, and this identity searching, people are easily falling into the seduction of this rebellion offered by these dogmatists. Uranus in the fourth house, gate 20, line 2. The Grand Trine demonstrates this easy flow into the seduction by these dogmatists. And they seem to want to lead us into this narrow path toward a dystopian future. The solar eclipse in the 8th house is conjunct the fixed star Markeb, which is interesting because it highlights freedom of movement and the search for the new. The star is associated with the sails and the symbolic journey of life. On the other side of this eclipse sits Mercury at 5 degrees Libra, which is conjunct the presidents in natal Neptune. It's in the gate of correction, in the line of the zealot. It's about an obsession with correction and its critical potential. Mars is also at the other side of this eclipse, now at the final degree of Libra and sitting in the 9th house of this chart. It's in a gate about values, and Mars is in its detriment here. It's in the line of corruption. It's about the corruption of values that may lead to a breakdown in defense. And Ra says about this degree, the worst to expect here is when you are corrupt, you get caught. In getting found out, you receive harsh criticism of the tribe. The tribe looks at you and says, this is the bad one. This is the mafioso, a gangster. Mars is the apex of a yod between Saturn and Uranus. And Mars is also applying to a closing square to Pluto, which will perfect on the 24th. It seems to suggest that we are going to be focused on a scapegoat, someone to sacrifice for a broader collective release. Venus and Mercury are the final dispositors of this chart and in mutual reception. Venus, on the cusp of the 8th house heading toward the south node, is separating from a square to Uranus. It's in gate 59, line 3, in its detriment, which describes an experimentation and openness leading to promiscuity and the problems inherent in that. Hence Mercury's focus on cleaning house. With Mercury and Venus in mutual reception, and Mars also ruled by Venus, Mars being the scapegoat, the symbolism is consistent with the Epstein scandal as well as the CDC scandal featuring RFK Jr. And both Trump and RFK have close aspects to this eclipse. Jupiter is on the cusp of the descendant in this chart, ruling Saturn, and in turn ruled by the new moon. It highlights the theme of luck being the primary factor in the expansion of detail. We are led to believe that truth, the word of law is simply a matter of getting the details right, when in fact, it's not about the detail at all. We manipulate the detail to suit our own agenda. Just because we flood the zone with more and more detail, it does not mean we will be successful in convincing anyone of our truth. In fact, it may do just the opposite, since most people are already drowning in detail. If somebody has already decided the truth, if the odds are stacked against you, this expansion of detail can simply be a waste of time and energy. So what will you decide is worth your time and energy? Will you actively contribute to creating your own ideal for the future? What pragmatic next steps will you take to ensure what you value most will be manifested in this new reality? Okay, I hope that was helpful. And I'd love to hear more from you about what you've been experiencing during this eclipse. So if you have anything interesting to share, please leave a comment below. And I'll be interviewing Dabney from Lawless Astrology about her own Chiron experience in the next couple of days. So be on the lookout for that episode. And if you're interested in checking out that Chiron course, I've linked it below. Thanks. See you next time. Bye.